Hi guys, I'm Wilson Scribezoo, and this is GosuGamers extended coverage of Overwatch Open qualifiers. This week we have one of the winners of the first NA qualifier, who will qualify directly into the regional final. Player, please introduce yourself.
I'm Christian Jonsson. My nickname's Coco. I play the main tank for Team EnvyUs, and I'm 26 years old.
All right, awesome. So first of all, how did you get into esports?
Esports in general, I don't know. I guess I was 18. I started playing Team Fortress 2 after I moved away from home. Basically, passing nights. Played TF2 back when it was kind of a new game. I stopped, basically, I don't know. They kind of ruined that game with patches. And then I played Heroes of New Earth, which is a MOBA that never really got as big as League of Legends or Dota 2. But I enjoyed it. I played it competitively 4 or 5 days a week for a few hours.
Yeah, awesome. So what made you transition from like Heroes of New Earth into Overwatch?
It wasn't really a transition. I kind of stopped playing Overwatch maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And basically, I didn't play anything competitively. It was basically playing games during the weekends with friends or playing CSGO casually. So basically, I saw Overwatch announced. It kind of looked like, I don't know, similar to TF2, obviously. And I kind of missed playing something competitively, seriously. So I thought I'd give it a go.
Yeah, awesome. Was your family kind of supportive of your entire endeavor of going into esports?
Think through the whole beta, like going to family dinners and stuff. I'd say I need to be home at this time because I'm playing a tournament in a PC game, and they were like, what's like kind of built up over time, I guess. Prize pools got bigger and bigger, and eventually like teams starting to talk to us, so they kind of got eased into it.
Yeah, so definitely. Speaking of kind of like teams and kind of like early on in Overwatch, so EnvyUs right now is on a huge win streak, probably one of the biggest, like a very comparable biggest win streak in esports. What do you think like really contributes to this kind of success that you guys are experiencing?
I think most of it just me speculating, but I think as basic team chemistry, and we put in a lot of hours, and we spend those hours practicing quality time. Like
Yes.
we always kind of like suggest to each other and point out plays that we can do together. So there's no like hurt egos because someone might have made a misplay.
Yeah, so like the core of your team has kind of been together since IDDQD in the beta. You guys went on a very similar win streak as IDDQD. In which period, like the beta versus now, do you feel like you guys were most dominant?
I don't know. Back in the IDDQD days, I kind of feel like I don't know. Some of those games we got kind of lucky where we won in that streak, and a lot of the games back in that streak as well were against kind of lesser opponents during like GosuGamer weeklies. Now as EnvyUs, most of the games during our streak has been versus the top 8, top 4 US teams. So I don't know when we were the most dominant, but probably during the EnvyUs. But then again, I don't think the gap between us and other teams are really as big as one might think.
Yeah, so I know personally, because I follow a lot of EnvyUs streams, I kind of know the backstory. But how did you guys exactly transition from IDDQD into EnvyUs?
Yeah, so me, Harry, Chips, and Hawk basically were playing with Mendo and Vic, who both left the team to start up another team. So we got back in touch with Taimo, who were trialing for EnvyUs, where Tailspin was playing at the time. And basically somehow it worked out that the then EnvyUs squad, the All-American squad, was kind of like quitting the game, I guess, some of them. And the team was kind of disbanding. So somehow it worked out that we got in touch with Mike Castro, the owner of EnvyUs. And basically we didn't have a sixth player, so we kind of got picked up by EnvyUs and got Tailspin as our sixth.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. So obviously getting picked up by EnvyUs is huge news. You guys have since moved to North Carolina to kind of start playing together, starting living together in a very interesting apartment complex. How was the move from kind of like going to Europe to America?
I don't know. I think it's been fun. It's been kind of, I don't know, kind of tiresome as well. The first 1.5 months, basically, we were in the team house, the old Envy team house in Greensboro, where there was like the 6 of us and Tasma and Graham, 2 of the Envy staff living there. So you didn't have a lot of privacy. We were all sitting down in the living room playing, and then basically share the attic, like 3 bunk beds with like Chips and Harry. So it got kind of, I don't know, tiresome to like have no privacy at all. But I don't know, since we moved to these apartments, I don't know, it's just been great.
Yeah, so let's kind of talk about more about that entire switch. So the old Envious house is kind of like what the old esports model is, where they just put all their players into one large mansion or whatever, a large complex house, and they have everyone live together. But Envious is doing something very interesting where they're kind of putting you guys into specific apartments. It's 2 people per apartment, and you guys have an office where you guys in the future will be playing at. Um, do you feel like what's the benefit of Envy is doing this? Like, do you feel like they're taking the right step forward, or is this just kind of like it's? I mean, for me, it's a very interesting process, especially someone who's very into esports. What do you think about it as a player? How do you feel about what are the benefits and what are the negatives of maybe doing this setup?
Uh, Me myself, I think it's super cool, and kind of paraphrasing Mike, it's kind of the next step, as he would put it, to like be able to be a pro gamer, have the benefits of playing together as in a team house, but still having basically your own lives outside of it. Like you go down to the office, you play together, you're all sitting there, you can like point out stuff on each other's monitors, and then you basically go home and can kind of cut off, live a normal life if you wanna, or whatever you wanna do. It's basically more personal freedom.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you guys seem like very good friends on stream, especially on Timeless stream, your stream, Chip stream, and Hulk stream, and of course Harry stream and Tails stream. You guys seem like very close friends. Did you guys ever get really tired of each other at the old team house?
Well, there are days, the good days and bad days. Most of them are good, but sometimes, I don't know, someone's in a bad mood, some bad stuff happens in a scrim, you kind of get annoyed with each other, but there hasn't been like anything like, I don't know, you kind of hear of in other sports, in other esports, I guess, where basically a team moves together and they basically don't get along at all and just falls apart. 'Cause that hasn't been the case. We get along pretty well.
Yeah. So the kind of situation currently in the Overwatch community is that there are actually not a lot of team houses. I think that you guys have a specific team house. LG recently announced that they're actually, after they picked up the old roster Too Strong, they're actually moving into a team house as well. And I think that Reunited was doing a boot camp for their qualifier. Uh, do you think that this is kind of like, uh, are team houses really necessary? I know that in Counter-Strike, for example, a lot of teams don't live in team houses and they kind of like more so practice on their own. Do you feel that Overwatch definitely needs team houses, or is it something where, you could kind of do with it or do without it?
I don't know. I've read a lot that people use as an example for like, see, these guys are the best team currently. Like they have a team house, nobody else does. Hence, you need a team house to be successful, and I don't really think that's the case though. Like, if you put in the same like amount of effort and time practiced, I don't think that team house like is the deciding factor. Probably makes things easier, but I don't think it's needed.
The announcement for the Open was honestly very sudden. The big announcement came the day before the qualifiers registration actually closed. What were your initial thoughts when you heard of like kind of like a $300,000 tournament hosted by Turner Broadcasting Systems?
We heard like beforehand rumors and basically people telling us that they can't tell us anything, but basically there's gonna be some big tournament, like whispers about it. So I don't know, but the qualifier starting basically the day after the announcement was made felt kind of sudden. But then again, it's fun to have big tournaments, like going to LANs and actually competing. We've only played online so far, so like tomorrow we qualify for Gamescom and go there, hopefully. So I don't know, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, so kind of like actually it does talk about the LAN portion of it. Like, are you guys like nervous about playing on LAN at all? Like, obviously, Envies has had this great streak online, but I think a big thing in esports is the difference between playing on LAN and playing online. A lot of people are what they call onliners, where they perform extremely well online, but performance can transfer over to like a very LAN performance. Do you guys feel you guys will have that issue at all?
I'm not sure. I guess it's up to like each and every one. Kind of, I don't know. Maybe someone gets nervous. I've been to LANs in TF2, like not huge LANs, obviously, but people standing around watching casters. And I don't know. For me, whenever the game starts, I just focus on the screen, and you kind of zone everything else away. So I like, I'm not sure. Like say there's an audience and there's a lot of people, and maybe I feel the pressure, but I think it's gonna be pretty fine.
Yeah. So you guys are the first NA team to qualify for the regional finals. During your, I guess, your match through the entire first qualifiers, who do you think was your toughest matchup, and if it, who was also the toughest team in the qualifier?
For ELEAGUE,
Yeah, for E-League.
I can't remember that tournament in like specifically though. So many qualifiers and stuff around, but TSM, the old Code 7, has been playing really well for stretches.
Yes.
So I don't know, they're always dangerous when we face them, and same with C9.
Yeah, no, for
So
sure.
every time like they go up against each other, it's kind of like a coin toss, and we never really know who we're facing in the finals because any one of them could like win on a good day.
Yeah, definitely. So currently, obviously, let's talk about kind of the NA scene. So the NA scene right now is it's you guys at the top, Cloud9 and kind of I guess TSM kind of second, third, interchangeably. I think honestly, I think Code 7 or TSM has kind of been beating Cloud9 most of the time currently, and there's kind of like honestly a pretty large drop off from third place down. What are some teams that are kind of like in that like below third place team that are like very dangerous teams that you guys specifically go out of your way to prepare for?
I don't know. I think every important game we check out VODs, we see tendencies of the team we're gonna face. Like even if we're the best team, we try to not underestimate anyone ever. So I think Fnatic and Scrims play really well from day to day, and yeah, I think the most dangerous ones right now who aren't DSM or C9 is probably Fnatic. But then again, some days they don't really show up, so I guess they kind of need to get more consistent. But when they're at their best, they are really, really good.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about kind of like the entire Atlantic conflict right now. So we have EU right now, which is kind of, Creation, Misfits, Rogue, Reunited, and obviously on the NA side, we just talked about a lot of teams right now. Where do you think the EU teams stack up against the NA teams? We haven't really seen any competitions where they've been playing on the same ping. Do you feel like we might be underrating EU teams, or how do you think they stand currently?
I think the last time EU teams has faced NA, it's probably been on NA servers, right? So obviously advantage to Americans. But then again, back in the beta phase, we as IDDQD would play NA tournaments every now and then, and I think we beat all the NA teams. So like it's possible to win on ping, but then again it's a slight disadvantage. So it kind of feels like the NA scene, the top of it, is probably slightly stronger than the EU one, but I can't say for sure.
How have you felt that the newest patch affected the competitive scene? Like what champions are like must picks right now? What champions do you guys kind of like feel like have dropped off and become weaker?
Soldier obviously has dropped off almost entirely since McCree does everything and does way better with the new damage fall of McCree. Diva, her defense matrix now is super, super strong. Makes her super viable. I think Sen also being more HP pool and just having his orb. The travel speed on his orbs, I think, is a lot of people don't realize how big that is. But you can't really run Road Dog as effective as you could before. And also, I think, yeah, obviously, Farah. Farah is super hard to run nowadays against McCree and Senyara combined.
Yeah, you guys were always, I think, one of the teams that were very on the cutting edge in terms of adapting to the patch. How big of an impact do you feel like, the fact that Hulk plays a lot of Diva pre-patch, and, you guys have like probably one of the best Zenyatas in the world on your team in terms of chips high, and obviously Harry and both chips are both great aimers, and obviously look like they can play on it very well. How do you feel like kind of like the versatility of your team is really helping you in terms of adapting from patch to patch?
Everyone being super solid players in general definitely helps us. But then again, even if you're really sick on a specific class, it's a team game, and every meta you have to figure out what characters work in like what kind of synergy and against what enemy team and on what maps. Basically, whenever a big balance patch like this hits, you basically have to relearn every map on both offense and defense. And some teams run kind of different compositions as well, so you have to learn kind of multiple ways to play every map. And I don't know, whenever we scrim a team, We usually do it in 2-hour blocks, and playing all, I think, 12 maps in just 2 hours, you usually can't even do that. So you can't really super hard practice every map. Kind of takes time.
Yeah, no, that's completely understandable. So let's talk about kind of like transition from more meta to like off meta. So during the monthly this month, the Alienware monthly melee this month, you guys pulled out a May from your composition. Tails just kind of pulled it out. Was that something you guys have been planning, you guys have been scrimming with, or is that something that, Tails just comes into, on the lobby and goes, hey, I think this could work on this specific point, and you guys just let him run with it?
I think Tail has basically at least once every week since the game launched, he's been, hey, let's try May. I think it can work here. But we've always kind of shut him down. But with Pharah being kind of completely useless in this meta, you kind of restrict the enemy team movements to basically go on the ground. And all of a sudden, May's Fall is actually kind of good. Then again, we tried it for a day or two before the, what was it, Alienware monthly?
Hmm.
And basically it worked super well. And then when we played the same team the next day with the same strat, we could kind of tell already that May don't really work in the long run. It's super easy to play around if the enemy team knows what's coming up. But none of the teams we were playing in the Alienware had actually seen us do it, so we could just kind of bring out the surprise strategy.
Yeah. So do you guys have anything, like, you guys obviously don't have to tell me the champion, but do you guys prepare kind of like these quote unquote cheesy strats, or like maybe like a pick that you haven't shown anyone yet? Do you guys have that in preparation for when you guys go to Gamescom and when you guys go to ELEAGUE?
Not really. I think mostly when we scrim, we want to be super solid on what we do. So basically in scrims, we'll play the same things we intend to play in tournaments and basically let every team kind of try to figure out how to counter us. And then we can just learn to play around the counters or see if we have to swap something up. I think in general, though, we just want to play super solid.
When that kind of like surprise or something that you're not really completely used to kind of hits your team in the middle of a game, how are the comms in the game? Like, who takes the lead on the team, or is it just kind of a team decision that, like, you guys plan everything out and go with that strategy?
I think back then when we realized that what we're doing isn't working, it kind of goes into what we do during scrims, where we just try to figure out how to adapt to our opponents. I think we were down 2-0 in stages, and then we started to bring it back, and we actually made it kind of close in the end. So I think we adapted a lot during the game, but it wasn't really enough. So I guess we learned a lot during that game as well.
Yeah, no.
So even if we lose, it was a learning experience, and we definitely got better at it. So it wasn't like we were super like dejected or anything.
Yeah, no, yeah, clearly you guys aren't. Obviously you guys were able to bounce back, win, and as much as, you dropped maybe like two games, one to Fnatic and one to Cloud9, you guys definitely emerged very, very strong and won the title in the end. So in terms of kind of like in-game communications, which is a huge thing, not a lot of pros honestly stream their scrims, and there's not a lot of behind the scenes POV VODs that we can really talk about. Uh, what would be some tips you could give potential, like, like team, like maybe six men's that want to transition into a more competitive nature? What would be some tips you would give in terms of communication? Like, what does Envious do? Maybe not, maybe very generally, that really translates in terms of improving your overall performance.
Like one advice, I guess I haven't played with a lot of teams that aren't envious, but I can imagine from previous game I played and other people I played with that you should always be like open to criticism from your team, like constructive criticism or like, can you do this and I do this and we kind of go together and do stuff. Feel like having a huge ego within the team is probably gonna be a huge detriment because you need to play as a team. So even if you're like the super sickest player and you feel like you're the best player on the team, it doesn't really mean shit if you don't play together with your team and kind of help them help you. So always like don't really just think for yourself, but think like what am I really doing in this team at the moment? Basically, you're always six men playing, and you should never like just see your own game.
Yeah, no, that's incredibly true. I think that's very true for a lot of other esports as well, and definitely, something a lot of competitive players can take away from that, hopefully. So as kind of like the main tank player for Envy, we often talk about kind of like the DPS being the stars of the game. The supports kind of like being their stars in their own right, but the tanks aren't really looked at as much. What would be some advice that you could give to your fellow tank players to help them do their job better?
I think one thing is probably get used to that you're not gonna be noticed a lot. I think you can go for flashy plays as a Reinhardt or basically whatever tank you are, but in a perfect world, basically all you'll be doing is basically be invisible. Like you play to help your other teammates make plays, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know. Basically, anytime you charge, that kind of charge needs to be thought up beforehand, and your team needs to know when you go in and what they're gonna do in certain situations. Just in general, I think very few things I do when I play Reinhardt are like spur of the moment, like improvisation. So basically, I don't know, play with the team. You can be like the best Reinhardt in pubs all you want, but just being mechanically good Reinhardt doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna be a good Reinhardt for your team.
Yeah, no, that definitely that makes a lot of sense. So, who is your favorite tank? You've been talking a lot about Reinhardt, but who's your favorite tank from like kind of like a fun to play aspect, or maybe you just like the entire kit? Like, who do you think is like who would you rate as the top? If you had to play one tank for the rest of your competitive career, who would it be?
I don't think she's really like a tank in the proper word, but Zarya is super fun to play, and she kind of fits the type of game playstyle I like the most. She's kind of, I don't know, half DPS, half support. She's not really a tank in the sense. I don't know, Zarya with like a team that really plays together, she just enables such aggressive play. Basically, whenever you play King of the Hill and your Winston jumps in and you bubble him and you basically force the enemy team to instantly go for the Winston while 5 other people from your team has basically charge in and get insta kills.
Yeah.
I don't know, just deathballing aggressively as a team is probably the most fun way to play the game.
Yeah, no, that's actually kind of what I've seen. So let's kind of like dive into more so like what your decision making is behind picking tanks. So typically, Hulk as flex sometimes plays the second tank character. Like what goes through your head when you guys kind of decide who plays what? Because sometimes we see you playing Winston. We all know Hulk's an extremely good Winston, but what kind of goes behind the scenes? What kind of goes on behind the scenes when you and Hulk are talking about, hey, we need these two tanks to fill the roles. Who plays what?
It often depends on, say, we play one composition for the first point, then we already know we want to swap up like these classes for the next point. We kind of figure out how it makes the most sense to have people stay on a class and who goes. Say we use Winston only on the first point and then we swap to Reinhardt. It makes a lot of sense that I play the monkey, even if Hulk usually plays the monkey and might be a better monkey than me. But if we want the diva throughout the whole map, it wouldn't really make sense if we both basically I play diva, he play monkey, and then we both go in and swap. So my ult kind of disappears, and then he goes monkey. You kind of lose time, especially in here limit 1, if you try to overly swap among your team. So kind of goes with like being solid on many classes as well, because you always want to kind of leave yourself open to have optimal comps where you don't really have to swap a lot between points.
So obviously, as the interview comes to a close, would you like to give a shout out to anyone, maybe your sponsors, anyone who's helped you throughout this entire process?
Yeah, shout out to like my team and to all my sponsors. I guess I have to check up to see the list. They have to be in a certain order, I think. Monster Energy, HyperX, Zoe, DX Racer, Elgato Gaming, Scuff Gaming, and NCXT. Thanks to them.
Awesome. Yeah. Obviously, without these sponsors, you guys couldn't do whatever you need to do. So on my end also, thank you for the sponsors. Obviously, thank you for GosuGamers for obviously hosting this interview. If you guys want to catch up on any Overwatch knowledge, follow us on our Twitter, which should be below my screen, or you can follow us on gosugamers.net/Overwatch for any news. This is where that interview will be posted as well as future coverage. So thank you, Coco, for the interview. Honestly, both our Twitter handles are right below us. Mine is scribeow with a one, and Coco's is envious_Coco. And I hope you guys see you guys next time. So thank you for listening. Thank you for coming, Coco, and I hope you have a good rest of the night.
Yeah, you too.